Welcome to this week's edition of Coach Prep. Coach Don and I are working on Zoom this week, and our topic is managing your roster, managing how you're going to do your lineups for different situations and different settings, and having a plan that everybody's on board with. So before we get into that, let's talk about patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Folks, we need more patrons. It's just that simple. Please consider becoming a patron. We're talking $5, $10, or $20 a month. I cannot express to you how much I appreciate the people that have been supporting us, the recent people that have come on board and are, joining the team and helping us financially. But if we want this podcast to continue to go, we're going to need some more people to come on board. We are definitely way back in the red again on a monthly basis. Several things have gotten way more expensive with the different servers and things that we need to do to get the podcast out to you. And unfortunately, we just haven't seen the sponsorship numbers and things like that have grown in a matching manner. So we need more people to support us. Again, $5, $10, or $20 a month goes a long way. It allows us to keep the podcast moving forward. It allows us to do things like our player of the week and things like that we love doing so much. So again, patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. So Don, had this discussion with one of the dads that I work with. He coaches a team. Thought it was a timely thing for us to be talking about. Here in Georgia, again, we're getting into the travel ball schedule. Some teams have been playing for a couple of weeks now. Here in this next week or two, I think everybody starts playing, and they'll be carrying it forward into the summer. And eventually the rest of the country that's playing their school ball schedule now will jump on board, and they'll be playing travel ball too. But it's the idea of how to manage your roster from the outset to the conclusion of every tournament, how to make sure that you're giving your team the best chance to be successful, but still making sure that you're giving opportunities and chances to players and rewarding good effort and rewarding hard work, but also to have a plan in place and have a way that you're going to be managing the games so that everybody knows what to expect. Everybody's on board with what's happening. And so there's less time and energy spent with people being frustrated about how much they're playing, whether they're playing or not, where they're at in the lineup, by setting some really clear expectations, some really clear guidelines. And then once you set out those expectations and guidelines, sticking to them and managing the team in the way that you told people you were going to manage it.
This is a good topic and a good time of year for us, for sure. And I know as a player, I always appreciated kind of having a little bit of a concept of how the day is going to flow. If I'm going to be starting the second game, if that's what the plan is, I'm going to catch that second game today of a doubleheader, then I can manage the things I'm doing and mentally get prepared and not sit there wondering, am I going to get to play at all today, or am I just going to sit the bench for the whole day? I've already been told that, I'm going to get that second game, and it makes it more comfortable for me to maybe be a better teammate, maybe be a little more prepared for my game moment in the second game of that doubleheader. Or I just think it's overall good. And, for families that want to make sure that grandma gets to come and see us play, that she doesn't have to sit through the whole day. She knows that we're supposed to play in that second or third game or whatever it might be. I'm a pitcher. That can help me manage how much warming up I do or don't do. And again, I just think it's just a better managed scenario if we do have a little bit of a game plan. And there might be times that we don't know things too. And things come up and things happen, obviously. So it doesn't mean that it has to be set in stone. But if everybody kind of has a concept of what to anticipate, I think that we can all be better at what we're doing.
Well, and I think something that we've discussed on the Everything Fast Pitch a bunch of times in the past that I think ties into this whole dilemma for coaches and managers. It's the getting my money's worth attitude that so many people have about their involvement with travel ball. If you're a parent and you're paying X number of dollars to be on the team, and you're paying the same amount that everybody else is paying to be on the team, it's real easy to have it in your head that means that everybody should be treated exactly the same because we're all paying the same amount of money. And I understand where that idea comes from, because overall, we've done a really bad job of helping people understand that getting your money's worth in the travel ball world, or shouldn't just to be about playing time, but it should also be about what you're learning and the environment that you're in and the quality of coaching that you're getting and how much you're improving and all those kinds of things too. But the reality of it is, for the vast majority of people, if they don't play enough, they don't think they're getting their money's worth. So the first phase of this has to be letting people know if our philosophy is for certain parts of the schedule, everybody's going to play equally. So if we're playing, let's say, 3 pool games, that in those 3 pool games, everybody's going to play the exact amount. If that means everybody plays the entire game and all 12 kids hit or whatever it is, then that's your strategy, that's your philosophy, that's what you're going to do, and you have to explain that to everybody up front. If on Sunday or whenever it is you start playing bracket games where you have to keep winning to keep advancing, if your plan then is to drop down to the 9 best kids, the 9 best hitters, however you determine it, then you have to lay that out for everybody up front and make sure that they understand that that's what's going to happen. Now, you're still going to have some people unhappy because, in their opinion, their kid is always one of the 9 best kids no matter what. Their kid always deserves to be in that lineup no matter what. So you can't solve all of it. But if you're completely transparent from the beginning, here's how it's going to be for the pool games, here's how it's going to be for the bracket games. You can disagree with my choices, but this is how it's going to be. And if you're going to use statistics to determine who the 9 hottest hitters are, that's great, but then you got to really use them. If you're going to say defense is our number one priority for these bracket games, and you're not going to use the batting averages to determine who's going to play, then you got to make sure that you've got some way of proving that this is really our best defensive lineup. If you're going to choose one pitcher over another, you have to have a way of delineating who's number one, who's number two, who's number three, and why you're using them in that order. And once you've set that up, you have to stick with it. And I think, unfortunately, what's happening in the current world is there's a lot of teams that are so desperate for certain types of players, whether it's pitchers or catchers or better players, that we hope that this is all going to work itself out, but we don't really commit to anything. So we end up with a whole lot of people not really knowing what to expect. And Don, I think your point about things can change, something can happen that we have to make an adjustment. I think as a coach, you should always have the flexibility to do that. But I think it should be something that everybody can look at and say, well, okay, Don should be our starting catcher, but he broke his finger. So he can still hit, but he can't catch. So when you don't catch, but now you're still in the batting order, everybody knows, well, okay, but Don clearly has set himself up for that. He's earned that, instead of, well, Don's out of the lineup and all of a sudden, something totally out of left field happens, something that nobody would predict happens, and we kind of, just make it up on the fly with no accountability to what we said was going to happen. And I think that we can get in trouble with that. And so I think for coaches, you have to be very clear, very straightforward, very upfront with what your plan is. You have to have a way to support what you're doing, and you have to stick with it. When we have to change the plan, why you changed it. And in your mind, it should be something probably more concrete than just a hunch, just a gut feeling. Again, it's hard for me to say that because I spent a lot of time in my life playing hunches and trying something just because I thought it would work. But again, in the setting I was coaching in, we had practice every single day. So when I decided that, hey, so and so's been doing really good in practice, I know nobody's seeing it but our team, but so and so's looking really good in practice. When I would insert them into the lineup, I had in my mind the confidence of knowing, well, I've seen it, for 5 days in a row or 5 weeks in a row, and now's the time, versus the parents who would be sitting in the stands wondering, well, why the hell is she playing now? She hasn't played in 6 weeks. Why is she in the lineup? Well, they're not at practice every day. So the travel ball world is so much different because you don't practice enough. You don't have enough chances to maybe have that same kind of coaching intuition about what might work when the numbers or the most recent evidence doesn't always back it up.
Tori, if we can get the parents and the families to buy into the direction that we're trying to steer the group, what a joy and a building thing that is for the whole team, rather than dissension or tugging or pulling in a different direction. And sometimes we just have to have that blind faith that their vision of what needs to happen that weekend or whatever is going to be a good one, and that they have a plan, and for us to support that plan is going to be what's best for the team this weekend. Rather than having that, snicker or that weird glance or whatever because it's not going exactly the way I thought it should go. Let's commit to supporting, our coaches and the staff and the choices they make through the weekend, and then evaluate it at the end of the weekend and have conversations or whatnot after that long weekend that we were supportive. I don't know. I just think that's a better environment, and the communication part's always important. But I like what you're saying about sharing a plan and then sticking to it as best we can and going with the flow when we need to.
Don, I always love your optimism and your hope for mankind and all that stuff. But the cynical part of me looking at the world today and the way too many conversations that I have with way too many different parents and again, at all different levels of the softball world, I think the days of anybody having blind faith or trust in their coaches without some sort of evidence in advance that they're going to still get what they want out of it, I think is never going to work. And I think
we're going to keep trying, Tori.
We're going to keep trying. Unfortunate reality. And again, I look back on the old days when we were coaching, and we always felt like we had that, but basically what we had was players that didn't have many options. So they had the choice of either being quote unquote loyal to our faces or not. And if they were not loyal to our faces, then they knew that that was their first step out the door. And nowadays, I think it's just way more complicated than that. And again, it comes back to the problem of too many of us equate whether or not we're getting our money's worth with a team out of solely playing time. If we could stem one tide with this whole discussion, it would be helping parents understand that if your daughter's playing for a great coach and she's learning and she's improving and she's becoming a better player and she's having a great experience and she's having a lot of fun, that sometimes it'd be better if you would stop worrying about whether or not she played the exact same number of innings as somebody else, whether or not you quote unquote got your money's worth because she didn't play in the championship game. The fact that she's the 12th best player out of 12-person roster never ventures into anybody's minds when they're trying to do the did I get my money's worth equation. It's like she didn't play. We got screwed over this weekend. And unfortunately, I think that all those other things we talked about, the total quality of what they're gaining from being on a team gets lost way too often. So I would love for us to change that. So coaches, here's my advice is have a plan, make it public, tell everybody exactly what you're going to do. If something does happen that you have to change on the fly, expect to and plan on explaining what happened, why you did it. And the more of that you have going on, I think hopefully, as Don said, we'll have less snickering, less worrying, less dissension, and hopefully a little bit more fun. And if we can stick to that plan, I think it's going to set us up for a lot more success. And unfortunately, everybody's not going to agree, but I think as a coach, you'll always sleep better knowing that I stuck to my guns. I did what I thought was right. I stayed loyal to the plan. And if that doesn't make somebody happy, then sometimes we just got to roll with that too. So that's going to wrap up this week's edition of Coach Prep. Please make sure you go to the fastpitchprep.com website or your Square Cuts training discs there. You also have access to the YouTube channel and the blog post. There's tons and tons of information available to you on our website. Also become a patron. Go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. All the steps are explained to you there. And as I said at the outset today, we desperately need some more people to come on board. We are heading towards a business decision here in the next couple of months if we don't see some more people come on board. And again, I want to say thank you very much to the people that are supporting us now. You're the reason that we're still doing the podcast. And we want to keep doing it moving forward. So we need some more people to help us out. So for Coach Don McKinley and our producer, Stan Lewis, this is Coach Tori. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.